In the deep silence of prehistory, long before written words or the rise of stone-built cities, other humans walked the earth. Their traces linger still, in scattered fragments of bone, in the marks of flint shaped into tools, and in the faint outlines of hands pressed against cave walls. These were not the remains of modern Homo sapiens, but of other kinds of humans, who lived, dreamed, and vanished in ages, now forgotten. For much of history, the picture seemed simple. Humanity was thought to be singular, a straight line leading to the present, yet discoveries of the last century reveal a far more intricate story. Each branch of humanity followed its own path, learning to endure ice, forest, and desert in ways both familiar and strange. Consider footprints fossilized beside the tracks of mammoths and saber-toothed cats. They belong to beings who shared the same landscapes, hunted the same prey, and braved the same climates, yet were not of the same kind. Some thrived in glacial Europe, others in the high plateaus of Asia, and some on islands long since claimed by the sea. Science has given them names: Neanderthals, who painted caves in Spain over 65,000 years ago; Denisovans, known only from fragments of bone and tooth, yet whose genetic legacy endures in peoples of Tibet and Melanesia; Homo erectus, who mastered fire nearly 2 million years ago, and spread across continents; Homo floresiensis, the so-called hobbits of Indonesia, who shaped stone tools despite their small stature; and Homo naledi, discovered in the caves of South Africa, who with brains no larger than an orange still carried out rituals of burial. These were not curiosities set apart. They were humans in every sense, capable of shaping their world, leaving behind symbols, and perhaps even asking questions of existence. Yet their stories ended. Some through extinction, others absorbed into later species. What remained was Homo sapiens, the last to endure. Beyond archaeology, myths seem to sense these forgotten layers. The Greeks told of ages of mankind wrought in gold, silver, and bronze. Hebrew scriptures speak of giants, the Nephilim, whose shadows linger before the flood. In India's traditions, time itself unfolds in vast epochs, each with its own people and destinies, each destined to fade before the next begins. Perhaps these tales are only allegories, or perhaps they are distant memories, reshaped by time, of real peoples who once walked the earth. What survives is not always bone or tool, but subtler signs. A streak of pigment on stone, a layer of ash in the soil, the faint trace of a fire long gone cold. Such whispers suggest that memory lives not only in artifacts, but in silence itself. This exploration will follow those whispers. It will begin with the earliest known ancestors, move through the rise of distinct human species, trace the achievements they left behind, and then descend into the mystery of their disappearance. The journey is not one of certainty, but of fragments pieced together, hinting that Homo sapiens were not the first and perhaps will not be the last. Let the thought rest with you as the night deepens. Are we the first singers in this ancient chorus, or merely the last echoes of a song begun long before our time? If a thought or a question stays with you, you may share it softly in the comments below. And if you wish to drift further into mysteries like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and stay with the channel. The stories that follow will be here whenever you return. The beginning of the human story does not open with Homo sapiens. It stretches back millions of years to a time when the earth was wild and untamed, when ancient rivers carved the plains of Africa and forests spread across lands untouched by civilization. In those distant days, long before writing or memory, other humans already walked the earth. One of the earliest glimpses of this deep past comes from Ethiopia. In 1974, scientists uncovered the partial skeleton of Australopithecus afarensis, dating to more than 3 million years ago. The specimen was later nicknamed Lucy, though the original name is unknown. The remains show a small-bodied individual with long arms, a small cranial capacity, and clear evidence of upright walking. This adaptation to bipedalism marked an important step in the evolutionary path that later led to the genus Homo. Not far from where Lucy lived, a trail of footprints was preserved in hardened volcanic ash at Lake Toli in Tanzania. These prints are more than 3.6 million years old, showing the clear stride of upright beings. They walked in groups, side by side, their steps frozen in time by a chance eruption. Looking at them today feels like watching shadows moving across the ages, reminders that the story of humanity began long before modern humans ever appeared. From these early walkers came the first toolmakers. Around 2.4 million years ago, a new kind of human emerged, known as Homo habilis, the handyman. Their tools were simple, little more than flakes chipped from larger stones. Yet those edges cut through bone, opened marrow, and gave access to food in ways no creature had achieved before. The rhythm of stone striking stone must have echoed across ancient plains, the sparks of survival slowly becoming sparks of thought. Then, around 1.9 million years ago, came Homo erectus. They were taller, stronger, and more adaptable than those who came before. Fossils show that they ranged far beyond Africa, reaching Asia and Europe. They were the first true wanderers of the human line, carrying knowledge across continents. Most importantly, they learned to master fire. Imagine their camps at night, flames dancing against the darkness, children warmed by its glow, predators held at bay. Fire turned nights into gatherings, transformed raw food into nourishment, and allowed human life to flourish in new and harsher places. From this point onward, the story of humankind was no longer a straight path. It became a branching tree, a forest of experiments shaped by time and environment. Scientists have identified at least 20 different hominin species, each adapting in unique ways. Some thrived in the frozen tundra, others found shelter in dense forests, and some learned to survive on islands cut off from the world. For long stretches of history, several kinds of humans shared the earth at once, their lives overlapping in ways only faintly understood today. Neanderthals built shelters and hunted across Ice Age Europe. Denisovans endured the thin air of Asia's high plateaus, carrying genes that would later help modern people survive at great altitudes. On the island of Flores in Indonesia lived Homo floresiensis, barely 3.5 feet tall, yet skilled enough to craft stone tools and hunt. In South Africa, deep within caves, Homo naledi left their dead in chambers that suggest ritual or reverence. These were not isolated anomalies, but entire humanities, each with their own ways of life, each now vanished into silence. And so the question arises, why do only Homo sapiens remain when once the Earth was home to many? Science offers clues: shifting climates, natural disasters, the pressures of competition, and even interbreeding. Yet the full story hides in shadows, with answers scattered like fragments waiting to be assembled. The mystery of earlier humans does not live only in fossils. Across the world, ancient myths preserve echoes of many humanities. Among the Hopi people of North America, stories speak of worlds that rose and fell, each destroyed when balance was lost. Floods, fire, or darkness swept them away, and from the ruins a new humanity would emerge. According to this tradition, the present is not the first, but the fourth world of humans. The Maya of Mesoamerica told of gods who shaped mankind in stages, first from clay, but the bodies were weak and crumbled. Then from wood, but these people were hollow, without hearts or souls, and so they were swept away by floods and storms. Only when humans were formed from maize, the sacred corn, did they endure. The story suggests that earlier humanities were created and erased, each one a failed experiment before the present. Even the ancient civilizations of Mesopotamia recorded tales of repeated creations. In some accounts, the gods formed early humans to serve them, but these beings were flawed, unable to bear the burden of labor. They were wiped away, and new versions were made, until one kind finally survived. Though written thousands of years ago, these myths resonate with the fossil record, where species after species rose and disappeared before modern humans came to be. Whether symbolic or literal, these stories share a theme with archaeology. The Earth has carried many humanities, each alive for a time before fading. Science uncovers bones and tools. Myth preserves memory in story and song. Together, they remind us that Homo sapiens may not be the first to call themselves human, only the most recent. If fossils and myths both point toward worlds filled with vanished humanities, what else might wait to be uncovered? Could forgotten traces of these people still lie hidden beneath the soil, waiting for us to rediscover them? For those who wish to drift deeper into these mysteries, You are welcome to stay, to like, and to rest with the stories yet to come. In the stillness of ancient nights, fires once glowed in caves and open fields, their light flickering against stone and sky. Around those flames gathered people who were not modern humans, but other branches of the same great tree. For a long time, they were imagined as crude and limited, yet discoveries have shown otherwise. They too shaped tools, left marks of beauty, and treated their dead with care. Their achievements remind us that the spark of humanity was not held by one species alone. The Neanderthals lived across Ice Age Europe and Western Asia for hundreds of thousands of years. Far from the image of silent wanderers, they were makers of complex tools. From stone, bone, and wood, they crafted points sharp enough for hunting and scrapers for preparing hides. These objects show patience and memory, knowledge taught from hand to hand. In caves of Spain, traces of red ochre still cling to the walls, forming hand stencils and simple designs. They are at least 65,000 years old, made long before modern humans reached those lands. These marks whisper of imagination, of a desire to express something beyond survival. In Shanidar Cave in Iraq, skeletons rest with traces of pollen nearby. Some believe flowers were placed with the dead, a gesture of farewell, or perhaps a sign of belief in a world unseen. Whatever the meaning, the care itself speaks of minds able to see beyond the present. In Siberia, deep within Denisova Cave, a fragment of finger bone and a few teeth revealed another humanity. From these small remains, scientists drew out DNA, uncovering a species now called Denisovans. Though little is known of their daily lives, their legacy flows in the blood of people today. Genes from Denisovans help those in Tibet live high in the mountains, where oxygen is scarce. In Papua New Guinea and Melanesia, their DNA remains alive within communities. The Denisovans are remembered not in monuments, but in the quiet endurance they passed on. Objects found in their cave hint that they too shaped tools and ornaments, though much of their story remains hidden in darkness. Far away, on the island of Flores in Indonesia, a discovery startled the world in 2003. Inside Liang Bua Cave, archaeologists found small skeletons, standing barely over a metre tall, with skulls much smaller than ours. They were not diseased humans, but a distinct species, later named Homo floresiensis. Despite their size, they crafted sharp tools of stone, shaped with care and skill. The remains of small elephants and large reptiles suggest that they gathered food together, working as groups to survive. Against the odds of island life, they endured for thousands of years, perhaps until 50,000 years ago. Local legends speak of little forest people, elusive and quiet, remembered long after their bones had vanished. Whether myth or memory, the echoes remain, adding mystery to their story. In the caves of South Africa, still another humanity was revealed. In 2013, explorers entered the Rising Star system and found a hidden chamber deep in the rock. There they uncovered the remains of a species named Homo naledi. Their brains were small, yet their actions spoke of thought and intention. The bones seemed to have been placed deliberately, carried into the chamber by living hands. This act suggests a practice of laying the dead to rest, a gesture of community and meaning. For long it was believed that only large brains could imagine ritual, but Homo naledi challenges that belief. They remind us that intelligence and care cannot be measured only in size, but also in the choices made in silence. Beyond these known species are mysteries that resist simple explanation. In some places, stone tools appear older than expected, as though shaped by hands long before theory allows. In other sites, bones emerge that do not fit neatly into the branches we know. And then there are the disputed finds often called out-of-place artifacts. A hammer sealed in stone, footprints pressed where none should be, objects that seem too advanced for their supposed time. Many of these remain debated, some explained, others doubted. Whether misinterpretation or genuine mystery, they remind us of how little is truly certain and how much of the human story may still lie hidden. Together, these fragments form a picture that is both haunting and extraordinary. Neanderthals left behind tools, art, and perhaps rituals for their dead. Denisovans live on in the bodies of millions today, though their faces are lost, The small people of Flores shaped tools and endured in their island world. Homo naledi placed their dead in hidden chambers deep in the earth, and scattered objects, real or disputed, hint that our history may hold more secrets than we know. What has survived of their achievements is only a fraction. Paintings endure only in caves sealed by chance. Bones remain only where the earth preserved them. Fires vanished without trace. Voices faded into silence. The record we hold is broken and incomplete, a handful of fragments from a much greater whole. And so the mystery deepens. If these other humans could create, believe, and endure, then how much of their story still lies waiting? Perhaps in caves still untouched, or beneath seas that once were land, entire chapters sleep in silence. What we know already changes the way the story is told. What we may yet uncover could change it once more. If you have enjoyed this gentle journey, a simple like helps the story find others who seek the same calm mysteries. Stay with us as we continue deeper into how these humans disappeared. As the last ice age advanced, ice sheets spread across the north and the climate grew unstable. Winters lengthened, summers shortened, and the animals that had sustained countless generations began to vanish or move. Neanderthals, who had lived in Europe and Western Asia for over 300,000 years, faced a world that changed too quickly. They survived in small groups, already vulnerable to shifts in their environment. Pollen records from ancient soils show that forests shrank, while open tundra expanded. With fewer plants came fewer animals, and hunting grew harder. Slowly, their numbers dwindled. By around 40,000 years ago, the Neanderthals were gone, their camps abandoned, their voices silent. On a small island far to the south, another humanity lived in delicate balance. Homo floresiensis had thrived on Flores for millennia, crafting tools and adapting to the rhythms of island life. But the island lay in a volcanic chain, and around 50,000 years ago, fire reshaped the land. Geological studies reveal thick layers of volcanic ash from that time, suggesting a massive eruption. For a species already few in number, the destruction was devastating. The hobbits of Flores vanished, leaving behind only bones preserved in caves, and the memory of their presence carried in local legend. Other disappearances are harder to trace. In the caves of South Africa, the remains of Homo naledi rest deep underground. No clear disaster marks their end. Perhaps they were always few, their communities small and hidden. Over time, isolation may have eroded their chances of survival until they too faded from the earth. While climate and catastrophe shaped these fates, another force moved across the world. Homo sapiens. Our ancestors expanded from Africa into Asia, Europe, and beyond. Archaeological layers show their arrival around 45,000 years ago in Europe, where Neanderthals were already struggling. The newcomers brought new toolkits, such as the origination blades, long, thin, and efficient, dated to about 43,000 years ago. These tools allowed sapiens to hunt more effectively and adapt to diverse environments. Larger groups, wider social networks, and more flexible strategies gave them advantages in uncertain times. The encounters between sapiens and other humans were not only competition. DNA tells another part of the story. Today, about 1 to 2% of the genome of people with European or Asian ancestry comes from Neanderthals. In Melanesia and Papua New Guinea, 4 to 6% of DNA traces back to Denisovans. These numbers prove that when different humans met, they sometimes shared lives as well as land. Yet while fragments of their bloodlines remain, the species themselves disappeared. Interbreeding blended them into the stream of Homo sapiens, and over generations their distinct identities were absorbed or replaced. Why sapiens survived while others did not is still debated. Some scholars point to climate stress, others to the advantage of larger communities or more complex communication. Perhaps it was adaptability itself, the ability to shift food, tools, and strategies whenever conditions changed. The truth may lie in many causes together, a web of chance, disaster, and contact. But again and again, the pattern appears. When sapiens arrived, the others soon declined. Beyond the accepted record, there are mysteries that hint the story may not be complete. At the end of the Ice Age, rising seas covered lands that had once been home to people. Coastlines sank more than 100 meters, drowning valleys and plains beneath the waves. If other humans had lived there, their traces now rest under silt and coral. Deserts too may hide what once was, burying bones and tools beneath shifting sands. From time to time, discoveries emerge that challenge the timeline. In China, fossils known as the Red Deer cave people show unusual features and may have survived until just 14,000 years ago, far later than expected. Some stone tools appear older than the species thought to have made them. Other finds, labelled out-of-place artifacts, remain controversial. A hammer encased in ancient rock, footprints pressed into strata said to predate humans, or objects that seem too advanced for their age. Many are disputed, some explained, others quietly set aside. Whether error or truth, they remind us that the human story is incomplete, and that whole chapters may still lie hidden. As the Ice Age drew to a close, Homo sapiens alone remained. The Neanderthals of Europe, the Denisovans of Asia, the hobbits of Flores, the naledi of South Africa, all had vanished. Their voices were silenced, their fires extinguished. Only one lineage survived, and in time it came to believe it was the first and the only. Yet their traces remain, in our DNA, in tools buried in earth, in art sealed in stone. Still, the mystery endures. Were they erased only by storms, eruptions, and cold? Or did the spread of sapiens play a role more decisive than nature itself? Again and again, our arrival and their decline appear side by side. Perhaps our survival was written not only in resilience, but also in the forgetting of others. If their disappearance was shaped not only by climate but also by human hands, what does that reveal about the greater story of our kind? Was survival achieved through resilience alone, or by leaving no space for others to endure? Such questions linger as the journey continues. If they speak to you, a simple like helps the story find others who drift through the same mysteries. And stay with us as we continue into the traces of lost humanity. The story of ancient humans did not end when their last fires went dark. Pieces of them remain, woven into the bodies of people today. Long ago, as early Homo sapiens moved across new lands, they met Neanderthals, Denisovans, and others. They shared more than tools and hunting grounds. They formed families, and children carried fragments of different lineages in their blood. Those fragments still live on, shaping health, endurance, and even the rhythm of daily life. From Neanderthals came genes that once gave hunters an edge in Ice Age Europe. Some of these sharpened the immune system, helping bodies fight infections in cold, harsh climates. Yet the same sequences can turn against the body, raising the risk of inflammation or autoimmune disease. In recent years, researchers linked one particular stretch of Neanderthal DNA to severe responses to COVID-19, a reminder that their influence is still unfolding in the present. Not all effects bring harm. Other Neanderthal variants affect skin and hair, traits that once helped people adapt to different sunlight and temperature, and some even guide circadian rhythm, the cycles of sleep and waking. Denisovans left a legacy of their own. The most famous is a gene called EPAS1, carried by people of Tibet. It allows life at altitudes of 4,000 meters, where oxygen is thin and most lungs would falter. Without it, permanent settlement on the plateau would have been nearly impossible. Other Denisovan sequences still found among Melanesian peoples influence metabolism, helping the body adjust to heat and humidity. These inheritances show that adaptation was not only learned through culture, but passed down through blood, a quiet legacy of encounters tens of thousands of years old. Their presence is also felt in objects shaped by vanished hands. In Denisova cave of Siberia, archaeologists uncovered a bracelet made from green chlorite, polished to a smooth shine more than 40,000 years ago. Its drilled hole is so fine it looks almost modern. For years, such craftsmanship was thought to belong only to Homo sapiens. Yet this ornament shows that Denisovans also shaped beauty, turning stone into something more than a tool. In North Africa, tiny shells pierced and strung as beads, over 80,000 years old, reveal one of the earliest known acts of symbolic adornment. Across continents, different human groups left signs that identity and meaning mattered as much as survival. Echoes of these other humans may also live on in memory. In Europe, Legends spoke of giants in the forests, lingering long after Neanderthals were gone. In the Himalayas, tales of mountain spirits recall figures dwelling in thin air, where Denisovan genes still help people endure. In Southeast Asia, stories tell of little forest folk, shy and small, reminiscent of Homo floresiensis of Flores. Whether invention or distant recollection, such stories suggest that encounters left marks not only in bones but in imagination. New discoveries keep widening the view. In 2010, a single finger bone revealed the Denisovans, proving that an entire humanity could be uncovered from the smallest trace. In 2015, explorers in South Africa uncovered hidden chambers deep in the Rising Star Cave, where the bodies of Homo naledi had been placed with apparent intention. In 2021, fossils from Nesha Ramla in Israel showed a blend of Neanderthal and early Homo sapiens traits, as if two lineages had met in a single face. Each discovery redraws the tree of humankind, showing it not as a straight line, but as a web, with branches that touched, crossed, and sometimes merged. These legacies remind us that modern humans are not the only authors of the story. Humanity has never stood alone. For most of history, the Earth was home to many kinds of humans, each adding something before fading away. Some gave genes, some left art, and some left mysteries still waiting to be uncovered. Their disappearance did not erase their presence. It lingers in bodies, in stories, and in artifacts hidden beneath soil and sea. If so much has already been forgotten, what else still lies waiting? Could the greatest chapters of the human story be those that remain undiscovered? In the quiet chambers of Denisova Cave, a single fragment of bone revealed one of the most astonishing secrets of all. In 2018, genetic testing showed that the remains belonged to a young female whose father was Denisovan and whose mother was Neanderthal. Two ancient peoples, thought long gone, were joined in a single life. More than 50,000 years have passed since that individual walked the earth, yet the discovery proves that the human story was never separate, but braided together. Humanity was not built from one line alone, but from crossings, unions, and encounters now half forgotten. That finding is only one thread in a much larger tapestry. Across the world, whispers remain of other humans, remembered long after the bones were gone. On distant islands, traditions tell of small forest folk, shy and elusive, said to have lived within memory, though the fossil record marks their kind as ancient. In the mountains of Asia, songs speak of beings who endured where the air was thin and the peaks unforgiving. Perhaps these are inventions of imagination, or perhaps they echo real encounters, stories retold until fact and myth blurred together. The earth itself carries other mysteries. In Turkey and Central America, impressions in ancient stone look strikingly like human footprints, yet seem far older than Homo sapiens. To some, they are geological quirks, accidents of rock and erosion. To others, they hint at humans not yet recognized, lineages that walked the earth before our charts and timelines begin. Whatever their origin, they remind us that the ground beneath our feet may hold chapters of history still unread. Each of these traces, whether in DNA, in legend, or in stone, suggest the same truth. The human story is unfinished. New branches continue to emerge from caves and deserts, from mountains and seas, reshaping what once seemed certain. The more that is uncovered, the clearer it becomes how much has already been lost. Entire peoples may remain unknown, their stories buried in silence, their presence waiting to be found once more. And so the thought lingers as the night deepens. If Homo sapiens was not the first, will it be the last? Or is this age only a passing moment, a single note in a much longer music, a fleeting sound in the great symphony of humankind? If these quiet mysteries stir your curiosity, a gentle light will help the story drift to others who search for the same calm wonder. Share your thoughts in the comments, and stay close for the journeys still ahead. Good night.